Well, that was a good start, wasn't it? Lucky you were in here, Scott, because I was babbling away and saying nothing. I literally started the show saying, "Welcome back to Daisy Asks. This is Amy G here." And now I'm being more professional and I was muted. So that was a great professional start to the live stream. Anyway, I'm a little bit dehydrated today because it was hot here today, and we are about to have another 2 super hot days, like melting hot. And so I didn't drink enough water, and yeah, my head's pounding, but that's okay. I still wanted to pop in and say hello and talk about some of the crime scene stuff. And lots of my faves are in here. Hey, Mustang, lovely to see you. Hey, Scott, thanks for letting me know I was muted. And hey, Kelly, so lovely to see you too. And hello to all the lurkers as well. The other day, I did a live stream. I think it was Tuesday night, and there was 0 people. So wow, I I was like, what happened? But I do know that this time isn't great, and particularly not earlier in the week. So nice to see some of my friends in here today. As I said, it will probably just be a short one today because I have a headache. You were here, Scott. You didn't say hello. I saw one person coming in and out, but you didn't say hello. Anyway, that's okay. So today, guys, we are going to talk about some of the crime scene stuff. I'm guessing that a lot of you have probably already seen the video that I made earlier today, and it seems to have been watched quite a lot of times. So I'm really glad about that. And Mustang, it's got your only friend, Mustang. I'm only joking. I'm your friend too. You know that. And anyway, so just a quick check in the chat. Have you guys watched the video from today about who did this, the scene speak? So basically, I was discussing elements of the crime scene and what they tell us about the type of offender that would commit this offense. Oh, good. Okay. You guys have seen it. So I thought we'd continue that discussion. It's probably only going to be about half an hour to 45 minutes. Famous last words, I say that, but I really probably do need to try and get some sleep given this head is pounding and we're not at the end of the week yet. But I guess I wanted to have an opportunity to talk out some of the questions that have come up and maybe dig a little bit deeper into the crime scene and what what it looks like it's showing us. So, yeah, feel free to pop in the chat, everybody. We are a really friendly community here. So, everyone is welcome to join the chat. So, I'm going to do a mixture of videos now. So some of the videos will be the 15, 20-minute ones that are all information. And hey, see-through, good to see you. And not much babble. And we'll do just a question and answer lives like today, where it's going to be pretty unstructured and just a chat. And then we'll also do the live streams that are more structured, where we have the slides and we go through more, not documents really, because I don't really go through documents as such from the trial, but the parts of the documents that I pick out and some of the research, like the case studies, things like that. So today is going to be super unstructured and a bit messy, as I said, but we will definitely keep going with the forensic unicorn stuff. Russell Williams, we were all doing a little bit of a shared conceptualization kind of exercise with Russell Williams the other day, and we've not finished that yet. So we'll keep going. My ADHD brain likes to have a million doors open at once, and I never fully close any of them. So you guys can hold me to task. Feel free to let me know if there's something I haven't followed through with and you really want to hear more about it, because I literally am like a puppy that's like, squirrel. Oh, no, another squirrel. Oh, there's a ball there now. And I jump around a lot because I have lots of ideas and I love novelty. So you can see me literally in real time jumping around. So if there's something that you want to talk about that I didn't finish, Let me know, because remember, I'm the person that's writing a book, creating a kids' social emotional learning program, advocating for Rick, and I've got some more ideas that I brought up the other day with my clinic director. So I'm always juggling a million um, projects at once, and none of them ever get finished. So let's try and finish something. Hey, Kylie, nice to see you. Good morning. It's a nice crowd again today. I like this time, just not on a Tuesday because no one's here. But today, at this time, I can see some of our regulars. So, anyway, we're 6 minutes in, just having a bit of a chat today. So, not super content heavy just yet, but let's get started. Let's talk about some stuff and stuff, such a technical word. Um, oh, Mustang. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, is on end of life care. There you go. Goodness. So, in order to kind of understand the sadism angle a little bit more, I was going back actually over some of the old serial killers that I've definitely looked at in lots of detail back in the day, but not so much recently. So, I was really interested in serial killer type stuff probably about 10 to 15 years ago. And then I kind of moved more towards more domestic crime, like family annihilation, wife murdering husband, husband murdering wife. I think there's just like that emotional kind of relational element to those crimes that I find super interesting. But of course, there is a relational element to sadistic offenders too, because when you look at their histories, you look at people like Ted Bundy and particularly what we talked about even with Russell Williams the other day, there really are indicators of attachment issues and relational issues early in life. Now, not everybody who has attachment issues goes on to become a psychopathic or sadistic murderer. I mean, if that were the case, gosh, probably a large majority of us would be incarcerated right now. Most of us fare okay, even if we do have attachment disruptions and injuries through our life. But obviously, it's this mixture of temperament, a mixture of relationships, and other factors that lead to the types of offenders like the sadistic, psychopathic serial killers. So, yeah, anyway, just long story short, I hadn't looked at the serial killer stuff for a while. And so I listened to Emma Kenny, who is probably one of my favorite true crime channels. I don't know if any of you guys follow Emma Kenny. She's amazing. I'm sure a lot of you do because she's a massive channel. And I remember seeing Emma on a lot of those Crime and Investigation Network documentaries and series about crimes all those years back. And she is just really engaging and really interesting and really knowledgeable, has so much experience. And I love watching her deep dives. So last night I fell asleep too, which is a really weird thing to fall asleep to. Emma Kenny talking about Ted Bundy and BTK because of course I'm always juggling a couple of things. It was going between the two because I really wanted to see, the similarities and differences. So I may have to do the whole serial killer circuit again to inform all of this sadism related stuff that we're talking about. So I'm going to put a poll because today's meant to be more interactive and I'm just monologuing. Oh my goodness, Scott. Sorry, I should put your comments on the screen as well today because it's supposed to be us all chatting together. Yeah, Emma Kenny. Yeah, so look up Emma Kenny, True Crime. So it's Kenny, Kenny. Oh my gosh, she's just like next level amazing. I find her so interesting and she's super deep dives. She is a psychologist as well, I believe. I think she's a forensic and a clinical potentially. I'm not sure, but yeah, she's really engaging. So if there was anybody who I would like to be similar to in this space, it would mostly be Emma. She's just super super cool. Let's actually I was going to actually bring her up on the screen for you. guys. Give me a sec. I won't play her video, but I'll show you her channel. So share screen and again share. There we go. Okay. Oh wait, I have to remove that. Sorry, guys. There we go. That's Emma Kenny. So Emma Kenny doesn't need me to be promoting her because she has sufficient subscribers there, about 364 times as many as I do. She's awesome, isn't she? I think everyone likes her now. And it's not that everyone likes her now, but as in the chat, everyone's talking about her now and showing how much they like her. So she has lots of amazing things. Yeah, she might be familiar, Scott, if you've ever watched particularly the British true crime kind of documentary series. She often talks about that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she is a psychologist, Anders. Oh, by the way, welcome. Hello. I'm pretty sure she is. She at least works in mental health and child protection, but I'm pretty sure she's actually a psychologist too. I think I'm right there, but I won't look it up right now. But yeah, look into Emma. She's awesome. I wish we could get Emma to look at Delphi. Like, imagine that. I would just love it. But given how many subscribers she has, pretty sure she's not going to be like, oh, I want to collaborate with Amy G on her 1000 sub Delphi channel. But you never know. You never know. So everybody comment on all her videos and tell her to come and chat with us because, goodness, I'd love to know her take on it. I think, yeah, it'd be fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to go into a poll for you guys today. And we are going to do a poll about today's video. So if you haven't watched today's video, let me know. We are going to go through some of it together anyway. But the question is, do you believe the offender of the Delphi murders was a sadistic murderer? Okay, there you go. Now, I know we had this question before because when I did the sadism live stream a little while ago, we talked about, our beliefs around that. So, yeah, if you answered that question before, please answer it again, though, because who knows? There may be some evolving opinions here, everyone. You know, interestingly for me, I didn't know a lot about crime scenes and what exactly it meant by staging and symbolism. I've actually researched a lot of this stuff over the last little while and come to this conclusion. I didn't know enough about sadism to know what a sadistic crime scene looked like. In fact, I didn't actually know, I guess, what a crime scene usually looks like. What is a normal sort of crime scene pose versus like of the body versus a sadistic posing? I honestly didn't. And today, I mean, my Google history is going to get me arrested because I looked up crime scene photos, not for Delphi, but just in general, because I wanted to get an idea of what bodies usually look like in crime scenes. This is one of those searches you shouldn't do. And I've done this before. I remember after watching the movie about Karla Homolka, and I remember looking it up the next day at work, looking up something about the crime and then seeing crime scene photos and then freaking out because I shouldn't have been looking at them at work. So, yeah. Yes, Mustang, you know Scott too well. Always needs a third choice, right? Goodness. There's no third choice. We're in for binary systems here today. No, only joking. You know, this whole channel is not about binary usually, but I think this question, you could be unsure, I suppose, but I think it's a little bit more binary than some of the other questions we might ask about this case. So Anders is saying, you stop listening to channels who think Rick's guilty. I was working on my cardio the other day, and while I'm gardening is often when I listen to like longer form content, and I listen to one of the channels that still does long live streams about, or not live streams, sorry, long videos and live streams about Rick Allen's guilt. And oh my goodness, I just like every couple of seconds, I mean, I was knee deep in gardening and dust and dirt and stuff, so I couldn't like grab my phone and pop in notes about all the things that I heard. I was just like, oh my gosh, mental note to myself within the first 2 minutes, there's like hundreds of things that I want to debunk. And if anyone wants to go back and look at one of my myth busting ones, I think there was a Mythbusters live, goodness, probably early October, where I literally said I'd listen to a video and then I would do a Mythbusters recording. And I was in the car coming back from a little holiday on a little solo road trip, and literally listened to 15 minutes and then just like talked for about 35 minutes or more, maybe more, about how wrong everything that was said in that first 15 minutes were. So, I mean, a lot of these videos, I do struggle to listen to them from start to finish, because I just hear so much folk psychology, folk science, as we've talked about. I hear confirmation bias, and I also hear the very same creators accusing people who think Rick is innocent, or people who are on the fence, of those very same things, of bias, of being ignorant to details. And I mean, they might not say it in a rude way, but that's the implication. And it's tough because they speak so confidently, and you could imagine somebody coming in fresh to this case and not deep diving it and wholeheartedly believing them. I mean, the way that they talk about the gun evidence as though it's just, it's in the bag, such great evidence, like it's irrefutable. And it's like, no. I won't throw anyone under the bus, Anders, but there's only a few channels now that believe Rick is guilty that continue to do lengthy videos. And I think in and of itself, that's unusual, isn't it? Because if they believe he's guilty, then basically there's nothing more to be worried about, right? Because he's already been convicted. I mean, yes, there's the appeal kind of going. And my son, my eldest, today we were talking a little bit about the appeal stuff, and he's young, but he is very wise. And and I was telling him just how long it's going to take and how long Rick has already been in prison for. And so, there's no risk of Rick getting out anytime soon for the people who think he's guilty. I wish there was, but there isn't. There is so much more that has to happen, so many more hoops that have to be jumped through. And my son, he's young and he's such a beautiful, big-hearted boy, and he was just so upset about that. I then told him about the Innocence Project, and he told me that I need to join it right now. And I said, look, I'm juggling a lot of things, but maybe one day. And he's like, but if you don't tell them now, they might think you don't want to join, as though the Innocence Project is like following Amy G around going, please join, please join. So, but if the Innocence Project is out there and wants me to join any Innocence Project, I would love to. I would love to assist and support other people who are in the same situation. I know Rick isn't the only one. And I explained that to my son. I said, one day, hopefully, we'll reach a conclusion with advocacy for Rick, and then we'll move on to someone else, because there's a dime a dozen of people who are in this similar situation. Sorry, now, let me go back through the comments. So, yeah, everyone struggles with the guilty channels, even the people who believe Rick is guilty from the sounds of it. Even my resident guilters, Scott. Only joking. Scott hates it when I call him a guilter. So, no, I just call you guys the people who believe Rick is guilty. And I have quite a lot of you guys in here, which again, I think is so telling about a channel, right? Because if the channel just has people who all believe the same thing, then that's more likely an echo chamber, right? So I'm always proud of the fact that we have resident guilters who hang around like a bad smell. Only joking, Scott. Everyone knows I'm joking. I would never say anyone hangs around like a bad smell. Okay. But this is just a tongue-in-cheek joke to try and needle Scott. But I'm not doing the same for you, Mustang, right? Only Scott. But no, like actually so many of my regular people who come into the chat and who I love engaging with believe Rick is guilty. And yeah, it is what it is. I don't mind that. I don't drone on too long, Mustang. Oh, goodness, I hope not. But I mean, I have the potential to because I can't stop talking. But anyway, I appreciate everybody who's in here. Let's see what Quietly Concerned is saying. I see Delphi case as a puzzle with lots of pieces missing, lots of strange facts that don't make sense. Always been unsure one way or the other. Intrigued by Kathy's interview. Yeah, and I think that's a really reasonable place to sit too, where you don't know, because goodness, how can you get your head around all of this? I mean, I was actually just thinking about that, like the amount of ChatGPT threads I have about Delphi, and I forget like which thread has which ideas in it because there's so many thoughts. It's like a web. And I think I said before, you know, I probably need to try and do some sort of pictorial diagram of the web of ideas that I have around this case, because it's just so much. It's so hard to organize all your thoughts. Yeah. So the investigation, yeah. And as again, my son, who's very young still, he was like, the judge couldn't do that. She shouldn't do that. I can't believe that. Oh, Kai's here now, and he's giving me a nice headbutt, which I totally need because my head is pounding. Hello, Kai. Nice to see you. I'm not on camera, guys, because I'm in my nightie with my Kai behind me and my Spooky on the couch next to me. So, yeah, looks like a lot of us in here have been banned from places. A lot of us are probably sick of the drama. I think it's really chilled out recently. I know that there was a little bit of a blackout on Twitter from some of the people who like to troll me. So that was helpful because it's been a lot easier on my nervous system since then. And I think now, like, I'm finding my groove in terms of the type of content that I want to put out. And I think we're kind of getting an audience that isn't just the kind of core Delphi community, where I definitely have not been super popular because, well, why? You guys can tell me why you think I'm not popular. But yeah, I think of quite a few of us and quite a few people who I believe have, you know, so much to offer in terms of critical analysis are banned from communities. And they're banned from communities that agree with them as well as communities that disagree with them. And yeah, I think it is laughable, to be honest. Yeah. So I've never really been banned from things before. I mean, I think I got banned from a forum once, like decades ago. But I've never been banned from things. I mean, I think then it would have been being annoying, and people just don't like annoying people like me, I guess. But no, I haven't recently been banned from anything except for Delphi communities. So there you go. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we're going to have some different opinions about some of the investigators, and that is okay. But yeah, look, I would agree with you, Mustang. There are definitely investigative failures in a lot of cases. Yeah. But I think in Delphi, it's just this whole systemic, again, web of problems. Yeah. Okay. So, guys, I'm loving the chat today. And thank you for making it nice and easy for me, because you guys are all engaging. So I'm not just having to talk, which is good. My head is still aching. I've got those bloody frogs. Oh my gosh, I can't stand the frogs. They're out there and they're going on and on and on. They won't shut up. The frogs are the only thing I'm banning. Okay, I can ban the frogs from my channel. Okay, anyway, so let's dive in to the crime scene, and I'm going to read the poll first of all. Where did we get to with the poll? Did I put the poll up? Wait a minute. I can't see the oh, yes, I can see the responses. Oh, we're only 50-50 still. How many people answered this poll? Why is it not showing me? Oh, here we go. We had 6 votes. Okay. There's 12 people in here. Guys, come on. 6 more people. You need to vote. You don't need to talk, but you need to vote. Do you think that it's a sadistic murderer? I'm watching the vote numbers there. So until I see 12, I will not speak. No, only joking, because I may be here forever. Come on, guys. It's not going up. Only half of us have voted. Vote, guys. Do you believe the offender of the Delphi murders is a sadistic murderer? And you are welcome to put what you think is most likely. You're not being held to it. I'm not gonna, hold you to this forever because you said yes. First of all, I don't even know who votes what, so I can't actually penalize or ban any of you guys for voting inappropriately. Only joking. Actually, yeah. So I think a lot of people do listen to some of my live streams like on the go. I know that people watch them on the TV, so that might be also why they're not voting. Oh, quietly, I'm sorry that you get affected by the drama as well, which is exactly why I wanted to create my own community where there isn't drama. I don't want drama. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't allowed to speak about things that hurt them or upset them. But yeah, just unnecessary meanness, trolling, invalidation, none of that here. So if that ever happens here, let me know. That's not at all what we want to do. So yeah. Okay, let's have a look at our poll again. No more votes. Okay, my appeal didn't work. So I can't see any way that this crime is not sadistic or doesn't have sadistic elements. So yeah, I'm with you, Scott. I think it definitely has sadistic elements. Now, when we think of symbols and rituals, they don't have to be rituals or symbols that make sense to us. They don't have to be related to Odinism. They don't have to be related to any particular organized belief system. No third options, guys. Yes or no. Yeah, because I think this is what people get confused about. And I mean, me too. I was like, well, what is symbolism? Like, does it need to be symbolic, again, of a belief system? Well, what's symbolic to one person may not be symbolic to another. And so the symbolism, for example, for BTK is the BTK, the bind. What's the T again? Bind, torture, kill. So it was the binding that was the symbolic aspect there. So symbolism is not always going to be something we can decode and interpret, but it has meaning to the offender. So without further ado, let's look again at why I'm now pretty much firmly in the yes camp here. Let's think about the crime scene. I'm not going to show the crime scene sketches, which is tricky because it's helpful to have a look at the crime scene sketches and explore them, but you're all able to obviously access that stuff. So anyone can access it. Yes, be very careful if you do Google it. If you Google it, try and stick to the media coverage rather than the real crime scene photos, or even some of the sketches are pretty horrific, right? So I kind of try to stick to the stick figure ones where you can see the patterns and the body position without having to see those poor girls, because it's horrific. The sketches, well, look, Scott, they vary a little bit. What I do is I'll combine the various sketches that people did at trial and see the similarities. And whilst there are little differences, there are a lot of similarities as well. So Anders is talking about the sticks and the concealment idea. We're going to definitely get to that today. It's think, that they're used for concealment either. And we'll talk a little bit about why I don't think that they are today as well. Mustang says, knew exactly what they were doing. Exactly. So again, an organized offender. So when we have a rage-filled attack, an impulsive attack, you're generally not going to see staging. You're not going to see positioning of bodies. You're not going to see undressing, redressing. You're going to see chaos, and we don't see chaos. We don't see chaos. And that there is what makes me think that this case is it is an organized killer. The concealment thing, look, we'll get into it. I knew Scott would disagree with me on this one, so we will talk about it. We're going to get into it. So let's first of all just look at the basic details of the crime scene. So you don't need to look up the pictures. We're going to just talk through some of the key elements, but if you want to confirm what we're talking about, of course, you can look at the depictions, the sketches. So Quietly says, I always make my own mind up and never follow a crowd. I find there are lots of people who think for themselves. Yes, and that's exactly what we want here. And that's why, again, nobody here is going to be penalized for having their own views. I mean, we can disagree, and I will disagree, but the whole point that we have people who believe Rick's guilty, we have people on the fence, and we have obviously me and a lot of people who believe Rick is innocent all together in one chat and friendly, and even a mod that believes Rick is guilty. That shows, we don't have to be an echo chamber. Like, I'm always going to try and convince you of my viewpoint. Of course I am. But I'm also not going to be disrespectful of other viewpoints when I disagree with them. So nobody's going to get called silly in here. Except me, because I am silly. Okay, so let's go to, I've got some notes that I'm going to kind of read off. So, well, should we start with concealment maybe? Because everybody was talking about that. Maybe we will start with concealment. I'm a bit all over the place. I will make videos. I'm going to do a whole series about the crime scene and stuff. So a lot of this will be condensed more. So, hey, Mama, nice to see you, and thanks for joining the chat. You don't believe it's one person acting alone. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a common belief as well of a lot of people, particularly the people who think Rick is innocent, feel like there would be multiple offenders. I feel like, from the research I've done, it's highly likely that the main offender, the sadistic kind of main offender perpetrator, there may be only one, or maybe a couple. I don't think there were lots of people at the crime scene. However, I do believe that there were lookouts and helpers. Yeah, I think it's highly unlikely that it's just one person who did this, acted alone completely, and no one else is aware of it. I agree. Scott says a lone perpetrator doesn't equal Rick's guilty. Yeah, exactly. It could be any lone perpetrator. And I know there's a lot of people who still believe it's Ron Logan or Kegan Kline. And I know I've not ruffled feathers so much, but I think people have been kind of dubious of my ideas around Kegan Kline. Now, of course, in saying I don't believe Kegan Kline is a sadistic, violent murderer doesn't mean I think he's an angel and, an innocent person. We know Kegan Kline is in jail for 40 years for horrific CSAM-related crimes. I'm not saying CSAM isn't bad. I'm saying CSAM offenders rarely commit sadistic murders. In fact, CSAM offenders rarely commit any type of violent act. It's a completely different profile. Now, are there some people who were CSAM offenders and catfishers who do go on to murder and kill? Yes. Are there a tiny group that do go on to engage in sadistic crime? Yes. It's just not the norm, and it's a tiny minority. So, yeah. Sorry. That's one of the rabbit holes that I've gone down, but yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the crime scene and concealment. Let's start there, and we'll work our way through a few different things. Yeah, I mean, so Kegan Kline, look, as I said, it doesn't. When I'm saying I don't think Kegan Kline is the offender, I'm not advocating for Kegan Kline. At the end of the day, Kegan Kline is in jail, and he's in jail for good reason, and I understand that. I'm not advocating for him the way that I am advocating for Rick, but I do believe he is not the perpetrator of the Delphi murders, and I think I have good reason to believe that. There is nothing in Kegan's actual documented information, like the PCA and what's publicly available from more validated sources, that suggests he had any violent tendencies. So again, the absence of violent tendencies doesn't mean he's a wonderful, upstanding person. It just means he's not likely to be the perpetrator of this crime, but he is clearly the perpetrator of other crimes that he's been convicted for. Scott reckons that people want to make things more elaborate. Yeah, I think that that's a very common thing just in the world in general. Like we think that more complicated is more interesting. It's like when you listen to music and the lyrics are so complicated, you don't even understand them, and people just assume that that's way more intellectual than, say, Taylor Swift, my buddy, who, obviously she actually is incredibly articulate, but also sings narratives that people can make sense of. But of course, even she uses her Easter eggs. The more complexity, the more mystery, the more dopamine, I think, to be honest. And so, yeah, I think sometimes people do overcomplicate things. So Rick. Why am I calling you Rick just then, Scott? I'm reading too many things at once. Sorry, Scott, you're not Rick. The 18 minutes between the bridge guy video ending and climbing the creek bank is a big mystery with the timeline. Well, yeah, but I think we made some good headway there, didn't we, with the cold shock theory? I haven't mentioned that in a while. Cold shock theory, guys. We haven't talked about that in a bit. That was my big thing just a few weeks ago, wasn't it? Mustang, you don't believe it's Ron Logan. I don't either. Ron Logan, was a fairly old man, and I'm not suggesting that he didn't have violent tendencies. Potentially he did. Again, though, violent tendencies could certainly be a risk factor, but is it rare for a man in his 70s to suddenly commit a double homicide of two girls with no history of homicide? I think it is. I'm not saying he doesn't have a history of violence and aggression and maybe criminal activity. I don't really know enough about Ron Logan's history. I have heard stories, though, about maybe domestic violence. I don't think Ron Logan is the offender either. I don't believe Ron Logan is the offender. I don't believe Kegan Kline is the offender. I don't believe Rick Allen is the offender. I won't speak to any other third parties because I can't say with any certainty that other names that have been thrown into the hat are or are not viable people to look into. So I didn't do the disclaimer. Reminder, everybody, this is just educational and discussion purposes. That's all we're doing here. No expert testimony, no diagnostic opinions, and no allegations of guilt. We're just speculating on the available information. But yeah, those three potential offender groups I would cross off the list based on the research that I've done and the publicly available information. Okay. So Scott, I agree with you. So from understanding Dr. Kaur's testimony and the crime scene, it appears as though Abby, and I hate talking about this part. I know I say it every time, but I hate it. It's like, it's so hard to just not coldly, but clinically talk about two murdered teenagers. But I believe that Abby died in the place where she was wounded. I don't believe that she was moved around very much at all. And I think for Libby, she was moved probably after her wounding, maybe before. before she died, but or just after, but certainly not hours later. So realistically, I don't believe that the girls were taken away from that scene. I don't believe that there's any evidence to suggest that they were killed elsewhere and brought there based on Dr. Kaur's testimony. Now, I know people will say, well, we don't believe Dr. Kaur. I think at the end of the day, we get to this point where a conspiracy involving every single person doesn't make sense. And there are a lot of elements of the crime scene and in terms of the girls' bodies themselves that indicate that they were murdered and died in the woods that day where they were found. I just want to go back because I think I might have missed a few things. Yeah, quietly. I'm totally with you. I think that a lot of speculation would have been a non-event if this had been kind of acted on earlier. So Mama says, this crime happened in a valley where sound travels, a lot of people on the trail. How did nobody hear anything? Well, we've talked about this a little bit too, Mama. So I'm not sure, you probably, you may not have seen all of my videos, but if you want to go back and have a look. So we talked about the trauma response and actually how common it is for victims of these types of crimes to have more of a freeze response and then what we call a flop or tonic immobility response. And what happens in those responses is that there's very little vocalization. There's physiological reasons for that. Generally speaking, screaming and crying out loudly is more likely to happen where there is the possibility of other people being around and hearing a girl, and the girls were in a fairly remote spot. Also, it's less likely potentially for these girls who felt trapped, controlled, concerned that they would aggravate the offender. So it's interesting. Not, some people would scream, but a lot of people wouldn't in this situation. And so I know it sounds odd, but actually, a lot of research shows us that a lot of trauma survivors and people who experience, grave threats to their life don't scream. They actually can't scream, and it's an instinctual response. It's not a choice. So it's quite possible that the girls didn't scream. Quietly, it's also agreeing with Mama as well. So I don't think it's so much that the noise didn't travel. I think they just didn't make a lot of noise. And when we've looked at the bridge guy video, and if you agree that there's fear in that video, which I do believe it was covertly recorded. I do hear and see signs of fear. The girls, particularly Abby, is very quiet. Abby is very much in that sort of frozen state. And I've talked about Dylan Mortensen in the Idaho 4 case quite a bit because, of course, she's got a lot of flack for her response in the Idaho 4 case. And yet again, Dylan Mortensen is a prime example of the trauma response that involves freeze and the sort of sense of unreality. I mean, obviously, there's other factors in that case. It was late at night. There was potentially, alcohol use, and it can feel like a dreamlike state. It could be dissociation. It could be denial. The frozen shock state that Dylan Mortensen talks about. Yeah. So I really think that. I know intuitively a lot of people assume we scream when we are fearful, but actually that's not always the case. So, the girls may not have screamed. They may have whimpered. Interestingly as well, people have said that they would scream if they walked over the cold creek again. Highly unlikely if they were in a fearful state already and then they're in freezing cold water. They may gasp or whimper, but not necessarily scream. Mustang says they didn't scream. No one was out there. Exactly. They were kind of in a position where they wouldn't They wouldn't have anyone that they could actually scream to. Yeah. So, I mean, look, I know that this is a divisive point, isn't it? Hey, Windy Weather, nice to see you. Welcome. Welcome. So Windy Weather has a different take as well. Thinks the girls were brought back later. But, so again, we're not taking any possibility off the table and saying it's wrong. I suppose for me, though, I don't find it likely, because my sense is that if they were taken away, well, first of all, I don't think that aligns with the phone evidence. But okay, besides that, if they were taken away, then when were they brought back? And why would anyone risk murdering them in that area at night where there were already people unofficially searching? Because I know that the search was called off by officials. However, there are plenty of people, I believe, I think I've even heard people who've said they stayed out there all night. And I imagine that would be the case. I know that there would certainly be some people who would have just, wanted to stay out and continue to search through the night. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make reliable sense. But that's not suggesting that anyone else isn't allowed to have their own opinion, of course. But I just think, how would they have gone back there? Then they would have had to have had some sort of flashlights. They would have had to, again, ensure that the girls didn't, make any sound. So, yeah. Scott's talking about teenage girls and how they might react in an abduction scenario, and that the body doesn't really let you scream. Yes, 100%. So, yeah, look, it's a well-known trauma response. The freezing, the fact that you don't vocalize. It's not the only trauma response, but there absolutely is plenty of evidence to suggest that it's not a rare response to trauma, to freeze, to not scream, to go quiet, to essentially dissociate or flop at times. And cold doesn't always lead to screaming either. Okay, so there can definitely be constriction of the vocal cords. Mustang, I'm with you. I don't think they searched that side particularly, or if they did, it might have been at a time where it was so dark that they weren't able to actually see the bodies. I don't believe it's that. As far as I can tell, and of course I've never been there, but I don't think it's as unusual as I believe people make it out, that the girls weren't found initially, because the idea initially was that the girls may have fallen from the bridge or that they had walked off somewhere. But the area in which they were found is not, it's not the first place you would look. And, even getting down there, it's fairly treacherous. It's like a bowl as well. I think there's just a lot of reasons why it could have been missed as well. We've gone off track with the concealment, but we're getting back to that. Okay, so let's talk about the concealment stuff. So in terms of the branches and the sticks, I believe the percent that they said was 3% of the bodies were covered. Now, of course, you don't have to cover the entire body to camouflage and to ensure that the colors are blocked. I agree. Yes, Mustang. It would be getting dark early too. If you think about it, the the families were there at about 3:30, but initially at that point, they were alarmed, but they weren't imagining that the girls would be on the other side of the creek. And so by the time they went to the police and then police came out, that was already past 5:00. So I'm going to guess that, here in winter at 5:00, and of course our weather is less extreme, visibility is already starting to get poor. So yeah, and that's if they, the police jumped on it straight away at 5:00. Well, one of the issues though, before we get into the sticks not being concealment, one of the things is, how would the offender, particularly if it's Rick and it's this impulsive, murder, how would he know how to conceal the bodies from the private drive view. Like, how does he have that perspective capacity? Like, for me, if I'm trying to do that, which obviously I would never do because that's not something that will ever be a position that I'm in, but I would think that you would need to be, placing things in front of the edge that sort of faces the creek, I suppose. Or then if you're going to drag the bodies around, wouldn't you drag the bodies behind a tree? Uh, I don't know. I don't think so, Scott. I mean, he had pretty basic training in the National Guard. I don't think he was any, significant military experience or combat experience. The private drive isn't like right next to the crime scene. So I think, like, how do you know exactly what can or can't be seen? And, unless we're suggesting that the offender then walked back to the private drive to double check that, I don't know. I mean, if we believe Rick's false confession, I'm going to call it, but his confession story, then this was an impulsive murder. He was scared and fearful, and a fearful, scared person is going to then do whatever he could to quickly conceal the bodies, throw leaves over them then. That's going to camouflage them as well as branches. I'm not suggesting don't do branches too. Now, the second thing is that if they're trying to conceal the bodies because they don't want anyone to see them, why on earth do they put a tie-dye shirt into the creek? Because Libby's shirt was bright. It was fluoro tie-dye. We've all seen it. So if you're trying to conceal the bodies and camouflage them, then a shirt that's floating in the creek, because it wasn't underwater, it was floating alongside other things, that's actually pretty visible. And in fact, that's the argument that people who say the bodies couldn't have been there and these things couldn't have been there overnight because no one saw them say. And I sit in the middle, essentially. I think they could have been found potentially if, someone had put to the flashlight on the right area. But I also just don't think that anyone was searching significantly at that point in that area. So, yeah, it was caught in a bramble. But the thing is that it's a bright shirt and it's visible. So why wouldn't he have then, taken that with him or smeared it in mud and put it behind a tree? So again, yeah, and the fact that he took those items off and then Abby's redressed, again, this is back to the sadism elements because there's no other reason to undress and then redress one victim. There is no logical reason. Yeah, I agree, Mustang, that they weren't seen till the next day. But what I'm saying is that if you are so concerned that you're going to grab massive branches from a tree to try to conceal the body's visibility from a private drive, then you've got enough time to think about that. But then you didn't think about the fact that you left a fluoro t-shirt. You know what I mean? So this is the problem. It's like sometimes, and it's the same as what we hear. And again, this is what I hear on some of the channels that talk about Rick's guilt. It's like the same channels that will say Rick is controlling and, dominant and manipulative, are the same people who will then make a comment that says, well, Rick was sick of being dominated or something and being quiet, or he's dependent on his wife. And it's like, you can't be both. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Yes, Mama, some of the sticks were cut, I believe. I thought I heard that too. It's not true. I don't know, but I thought I heard that too. It's a pretty big tree limb, the one that is over Libby. And it's interesting because what we've got to remember is the way that the branches are positioned and the number of branches. So there are multiple long branches positioned over and around both of the girls. They're diagonal, intersecting sticks that occur across the torso. There are branches running parallel to the limbs. The lines are radiating outwards from the bodies. Both bodies are are basically, they're not covered in sticks. They're not sticks that are just thrown on top of them. They may not be arranged in any particular rune or anything like that, but they form straight intentional lines. They cross at angles. There are parallel ones. They don't tangle or pile the way we would expect natural debris to. They actually line up with the bodies. Now, they're not completely symmetrical. That's not odd, but because actually that could still be symbolic. I don't know what they symbolize. I'm not at all here to suggest that they symbolize a particular thing, because as we said before, symbolic or ritualistic aspects of sadistic crime are not always going to be decodable to the rest of us. They're personal. And not only are they personal, but probably nobody in here is a sadistic or criminal, so we probably wouldn't understand the meaning either. So I'm not buying into it being purely like an odinistic ritual, but I am suggesting that there is a ritual element to those sticks. They didn't just fall that way. The way that they are spaced, it's just unusual. We don't see clumps, we don't see nests, we don't see tangles, we don't see piles. So, and look, with the shirt, I'm not suggesting that the shirt is anything major, as in, it was deliberately placed in the creek to, be an indicator or anything like that. I guess what I was getting at though is that this person's been so intentional apparently, and color blocking the bodies, but then has put a bright shirt into the creek. So it doesn't make sense. And so what we know with sadistic offenders is they're not concerned with concealment. In fact, it's the opposite. They don't care if people see it. Right. And actually with more impulsive offenders who, act in a moment of rage or emotional kind of, impulsivity. Hey, Four Pits, nice to see you. Then they're more likely to drag the body and try and hide it in a bush. These bodies were not hidden. They were in plain sight. So they were isolated because that's the only place that the crime could occur. They couldn't have been committed. The crime couldn't have been committed on the actual bridge itself. But I would imagine that if the bridge was clear and it was nighttime and there was no one else there, that this offender wouldn't have had any difficulty potentially with putting those bodies in a more visible area as well. It doesn't seem as though they were concerned about. Thanks, Mustang. I really appreciate that. I don't think that this offender was concerned about what was going to be found. And the brazenness of that, again, fits with the sadistic profile. So, yeah, I mean, if you're hiding bodies, I think, people would dump things quickly. You would have, a messy kind of covering whatever they land on. But it doesn't cover some large areas of exposed skin. So I don't know. I mean, that's my sense. I don't think I'm just using intuition here. It just doesn't land. Now, if we then go into the bodies themselves, and again, I know this is going to be something that, again, is divisive, but this is why I was looking up bodies and crime scenes today, because when you see bodies where there's been a frenzied attack, a more impulsive, rage-based murder, they're either lying kind of flat on their backs or they're kind of curled. We don't tend to see these sort of unnatural bends in the body. So I know Scott's going to disagree with me here, but the orientation of those bodies is not consistent with a collapse after being wounded, mortally wounded. It's not consistent with the body being dragged either. I mean, I know the body was dragged. To me, and through the kind of research that I've done, there are actually indicators of deliberate movement of a body, and there's no reason to do that in an impulsive murder, except perhaps, I guess, and I mean, I could research this further, but I think when people lash out and maybe murder someone that they love, sometimes they may stage the body to make it more peaceful. These girls did not look peaceful, so their silhouettes just, there is something very unusual. So yeah, I don't think that the bodies look natural. Mustang, you think that Abby might have just grabbed what was available? Yeah, but putting on damp jeans. I mean, if she had the sweatshirt wrapped around her or something like that, potentially. But yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. Yeah. Pulpit says the state's theory says Derek was on the trails when the girls were unalived. Right there, it's a big red flag. Yeah, I mean, look, I I think that Derek actually doesn't arrive as early. I think I think it's that document that we've talked about where they've got the cars and people seeing cars at different times. I feel like Derek arrives at around 3:15, 3:30, and I think the girls are already dead by then. Yeah, Mustang, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, you probably wouldn't put on two bras, would you? And Scott says forced redressing, but again, why? That there is the element of sadism. There's no reason to force somebody to redress. So yes, it's a sadistic gesture. Now, so then my question for you is, if you agree that it's a sadistic crime, how is Rick a sadist that has not one indicator of sadism? The only indicator you could find is if you said he's guilty of this crime, therefore he's a sadist. But if we look at Russell Williams, who is the closest we can get, because he's literally the only person that I can find that committed a sadistic crime later in life. And when I say later in life, not really old, but most of them started in the 20s and 30s. So he was in his 40s when he first started to commit his crimes. Russell Williams has some of those features. He's a real anomaly. He is incredibly rare, but he showed the dominance, the need for prestige, the kind of shallow emotionality. Hey, RC991, nice to see you. So Russell Williams had some of the personality indicators. It's still super, super, super rare, but he did. And actually, Anders, you're onto a really good point. We're going to talk about this in a minute. But yeah, Rick is the anti-sadist profile. He does not have any of the personality qualities that link to sadism. He doesn't have any deviance or violent history. And really key point that Anders brings up, they don't even find anything strange on his devices. They don't find anything strange, full stop, because when I looked at sadistic murderers, even and I'm going to put this in quotation marks, cleverest of the clever, the ones that are really good at getting away with it, Ted Bundy, BTK, and Russell Williams. Well, guess what? When their property was searched, things were found. So sadistic offenders don't hide it all completely. I couldn't find one. And again, you're always welcome to trip me up on this, but there is no offender that I could find of this type. So an offender that commits a sadistic homicide where they've subsequently searched their home and found nothing, not one piece of evidence. Now with Rick, what did they find? the trophy bullet, which doesn't even make any sense logically. Who's going to keep the bullet from the gun that they didn't actually use to kill the girls, but to control them? Only they accidentally dropped the bullet, and that's the one thing that can then potentially link them to the crime scene, even though that tool mark analysis is ridiculous. But it doesn't make sense. It's just a round in a box. It's a common round of ammunition. So first of all, they didn't find anything. And yes, okay, the 2017 phone's missing for whatever reason, but you don't just have, and I said this so many times, you don't just have your sadistic era in 2017 and then you're done with it. So how is it that Rick is cleverer and more sophisticated a criminal than BTK, than Ted Bundy, than Russell Williams? And this is no offense to Rick. I'm not suggesting that he's any less than them. You don't want to be a sophisticated offender like them. But they are. They were sophisticated offenders. That's how they got away with this stuff for so long. And yet there's still leakage. There's leakage in their property, in their home, in their behavior. And Rick has none of that. Not one thing. And in regards to Scott, this is twisting it, isn't it? I mean, come on. And so why is racking a bullet something that feels symbolic? I mean, okay, it could be his sadistic symbol, but again, what we're saying here is that the other offenders we're discussing, they have, catalogs of photos. They have digital evidence that links them to the crime. It's not just one funny round, left there. So, yeah. And the stresses that you guys are talking about for Rick, again, stress doesn't lead to sadism. Stress isn't a trigger for a sadistic crime. So losing a loved one, being depressed, feeling highly suicidal, and in fact, a sadistic offender isn't going to feel the guilt to then have a nervous breakdown in 2019. You don't just have a sadistic era. I think that's what's really, really key here. Sadism isn't something that actually just develops over time, and it's also not something that goes away. So if we agree there are sadistic elements in this crime scene and that this person has sadistic qualities, then that doesn't align with Rick, having committed the crime and 2 years later having a breakdown because he felt so guilty, and it doesn't align with him caring that he lost his brother-in-law and then wanting to go and kill 2 girls in a park. Because if he cared enough about his brother-in-law, again, that suggests, a deep emotional world, which is exactly what we hear about Rick. Right? 100% Anders, though. 100% Anders. Yes. So neuroticism is going to be low in this type of offender. Now, it's not going to be low in every type of offender, but it is going to be low in a sadistic offender. And this is, again, the reason that I was saying, unpopularly, that I don't believe Kegan Kline is the offender either, because Kegan Kline, whilst having committed some despicable crimes, is more likely to have neurotic traits than sadistic traits. So he definitely has traits that are deplorable, but it's far more likely that he would be a neurotic person than a psychopathic person. Hey, USA. Nice to see you. Like I was saying before, lots of my faves in here today. So really nice to see you guys. And we're already at an hour and 9. And I said, I'm just going to do a quick one. But this is an interesting conversation. But Scott, 87% isn't good enough, though. Come on, more than 13% for the fact that he would be a forensic unicorn. There is no sadistic offender like Rick. There really isn't. Okay, let me read through a little bit more. So let's put USA Libertarian. That could be, but more likely just random bullets all over the place. I agree with you. USA, logically, I agree with you too. Yeah. So Four Pit says meth moves people towards sadistic thoughts. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about meth. I'm happy to look into that. But yeah, I'm not sure. Exactly, USA. He, and the thing is so with sadistic offenders, we have to say that the sadistic offenders that have been caught had kill kits, some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have kill kits. And those are the things that are found. Right. And I feel like this is exactly why they tried to paint the bridge guy starter kit as a kill kit too. Oh, hey, Sandy. Nice to see you. 100%. I'm in total agreement with you, Sandy. Rick is not a sadist. And yeah, this crime is a sadistic organized offender. Yeah. Yeah, Scott, but like how much are we stretching to believe that? Like that there's someone exactly like him that just never got caught. We're now looking at centuries of crime. I mean, is it possible? Of course, anything's possible. I mean, it's possible then that I could be responsible for this crime, but it's highly unlikely because he's got the absolute opposite profile. Similar to me, I don't have any sadistic traits at all. And so I would have the opposite profile of this too. Well, this is one thing we're going to agree on, Scott. Our buddy Nick, we're going to agree on some of his interesting statements. Okay. Yeah, USA. I mean, look, realistically, I mean, sure, in the bulky jacket, could there be a kill kit? There could be. Again, then this is likely a sadistic offender. And this is another point actually that's probably good to raise is that this is unlikely a first-time offender. So when I was doing my trip down memory lane of serial killers yesterday, I was listening to the history of some of BTK's crimes. And early on, he made lots of mistakes. He didn't know what he was doing. Okay. So, I mean, it's horrific to listen to these, but with the first family, the Otero family. Oh, hey, Dee, nice to see you. Like I said, all my faves in here, guys. So nice to see you. But yeah, so he basically didn't know how much pressure to apply in order to murder the Otero family. And they kept waking up and, coming back to consciousness. And then there's a second crime where it's a woman and her male friends there that he didn't expect it, and it becomes a shambles as well. Now, this crime was so precise. The injuries on the girls were not injuries that a novice who doesn't know anything about killing could do. And now I know this is where people are going to say, well, Rick went to, had some military training. Yes, the National Guard. I don't believe, as far as I could see, that there was any active combat. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, how does he know how to be so precise with, murdering two girls and controlling them? I don't see that as being a first time offender. Now, does that mean it has to be someone who's killed a human before? No, not necessarily. It could be, but it could also be someone who's had experience killing other creatures. Why the oh god, Scott, Breaking Bad? Okay, I don't know. Sandy, look, you're always welcome here. I agree with you. Anyone who watches my channel knows that I've had my fair share of nastiness and betrayal and trolling. So I always aim to make this space a warm, welcoming space. And we can agree to disagree like we do regularly. But yeah, The thing with the murder, so again, I don't know enough about wounds and murders because, of course, it's not like I'm interested in the psychology. I wouldn't have a clue how to murder someone, and I never would want to. I'm one of those people who is like, I don't even know if I could do it to save my life. I don't know. Again, we don't know what we have not experienced, but I still think that in order to enact the type of wounds that were done to the girls, yeah, it just I think it takes a lot more precision. Yeah. Mustang, I watched a bit of Dexter, but I found Dexter to be a little bit too gory for my liking. Yeah, I know lots of people love it, but yeah, for me, I don't want gore. I want psychological thrill, which I know a lot of these shows have as well. But yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm so glad you feel that way, Sandy. That's how we always want to make it. And even like, when we disagree and like sometimes my feathers can be ruffled, and I'm sure I ruffle other people's feathers. It's always just done in good faith and in debate. And this is something we all get passionate about, but it's not about the person who we're disagreeing with. It's just about the concepts or the arguments. So yeah. Yeah, that's right, Anders. He did kill other serial killers. So yeah, no issue with, well, not no issue with that. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's more I just don't really like blood and gore very much. Like I love true crime and I love you know, obviously it's a very dark area, but I like the psychology aspect of it more than, when you see the violent scenes and stuff. Yeah. It's hard to know who the target was. I think Libby was probably killed first and Abby second, but it's hard to know. It's really hard to know what the motive was. I think. Okay, look, I've had a theory. If I tell you guys my theory, I won't mention names, but I will tell you my theory. And this has been the theory I've had probably for the last 6 months or so, like since I really got heavily involved in the case and looking at the exhibits and things when they came out. I believe that the offender who murdered them or planned the murder of them, I believe that that person was known to them. I believe not necessarily closely. I definitely do not believe it's family. Again, I've sort of talked about this before. This is not something that to me looks like a family related crime. But I believe it's someone known to them and who had access to their whereabouts. I wonder if the person who did this may have perpetrated sexual offences. And again, this is not Keck and Klein here. We're not talking CSAM sexual offences. I think contact sexual offences or something to that effect, that one of the girls, I believe it may be Abby, had hey C1, good to see you. Yes, I agree. I'd probably confess too if I was mentally abused, for sure. Yeah, so okay. So again, this is total speculation, guys, because of course I don't know this for sure, but it's probably the way that again, this is my intuition. And I've always said we don't rely on intuition completely, but I think that potentially Abby was the victim or the observer of something that was horrible. And I think Libby was her best friend and very protective of Abby. And I think whoever did this had a dual aim, an aim to silence the girls or one of the girls for what they knew, but also wanted to have a bit of sadistic fun in the process as well. So that's my theory, because I don't think this was a reactive escalation or sexual assault. I believe that this was a planned, organized murder. and there were sadistic elements, but I don't think it was completely random. I think that whoever did this knew the girls were going to be there, and lured them there, to be honest, but not as a catfish in the Kegan Klein sort of way. Yeah. Hey, Lisa, thanks for joining. Yeah, and we all wish he had got a fair trial for sure. Yeah. So let's see the poll. Has anyone else answered our poll while we've been chatting? Let's have a look. Oh goodness, my screen's jamming. We have got more. Okay, so 73, 22 votes. My goodness, last time I checked it was 6. Good job, guys. Thank you for engaging. It's really helpful to see what everyone's thinking. So yeah, the vast majority think it's a sadistic murderer, and 27% still not convinced. I'm going to end that poll, and I'm going to give you one more poll, and then we're probably going to finish up because there's so much more to talk about, and we've got lots more time to do that over the next little while. I'm sure we'll have plenty more lives. So the DNA is another thing that I'm going to talk about soon, Anders, because the DNA is another misunderstood kind of area in this case as well. So my understanding is there's not enough DNA to indicate any profile in particular. In fact, I believe one of them, and I don't know which one, but there's one of the profiles where they couldn't even isolate a Y chromosome. So they can't even say if it's male or female. So it was all very inconclusive, not enough. There isn't a whole lot of DNA they should have tested that they didn't, which I know is what we often hear. And again, that has that shock value that really gets the kind of indignation of people, but no, I don't think that's what I see from looking at Stacey. Is it Boz? I never remember her last name. Apologies, Stacey. But yes, I don't believe that there is any indicator that they deliberately didn't test DNA that they should have, that there just wasn't enough DNA. And interestingly, DNA is, I think that the kind of explanation of the laundry issue, a lot of people say, oh no, that just sounds far-fetched. Well, actually, it's not super far-fetched. So definitely DNA can transfer in laundry, and additionally, males shed more DNA than females, apparently. So if I lived in a house with a few males, then the potential is that there would be male DNA on my clothing, and particularly apparently underwear. Not for any suspicious reason other than underwear is an area where we sweat more, where there's elastic that's, that I guess maybe, I don't know, adheres to DNA. I don't really know. I don't know the science. We'll ask Nana G about this because that's her area of expertise. But yeah. Okay. So let's pop this final poll question in. Do you think Kegan Klein could be involved? So I think you guys now all know my answer to this, but I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking. We're going to talk a lot more about Kegan Klein and CSAM stuff at some point, not because I believe that Kegan Klein is involved, but actually I think he's another, what do they call it, red herring or something like that? Yeah. Okay, let me go back to the chat. While I was doing the poll, I missed a few things. USA says, how do we know this is about power? Do you speak to law enforcement's views of sadism? Yeah, I think they know it's a sadistic crime. I honestly do. I don't know how they couldn't. The way that they describe the crime scene, the way that the bodies are found. Yeah, I think they know for sure. Sandy, we think alike then. Yeah, I've always thought Kegan is a red herring. I never really sort of took him for someone who was likely to be the perpetrator. And there's good psychological reasons for that. Kegan's profile, whilst absolutely problematic when it comes to child exploitation, CSAM related crimes that are not something that we say is is something that we can just let go of. It's still a different type of offense. So it's not about us saying he's not guilty of anything, but it's about saying he's probably not guilty of this. So I don't know about this one, C one day. I haven't heard about that, but that's something we can look at too. Yeah, that's what they're portrayed as. So this is again, and look, even I myself am guilty of this too, of that myth of like, well, they must be a really, psychopathic, sadistic person if they're engaging in that. And I know people will tell you stories about, what Kegan Kline supposedly did, but again, it's hard to know what's a Reddit sort of story that's just circulated versus what's actually been found. And I guess when you look at the PCA for Kegan Kline, I mean, he was really investigated quite significantly, obviously, by the FBI and by law enforcement. And if they don't have anything there that indicates any contact offences or serious violent offences, again, are we to suspect that Kegan Kline or Richard Allen are these absolutely ridiculously clever, precise offenders that have outsmarted people like BTK and Ted Bundy? Because I'm doubtful. And when people then say, well, maybe they're the low-hanging fruit in a whole network, would these be the people you choose as your low-hanging fruit? Because they're pretty weak links, right? And again, no offense, I'd be a weak link too. These are not the sorts of people with their I guess their psychological constitution that people are going to use as part of a wide conspiracy or gang or whatever it is, crime network. Because goodness, these guys would expose everyone, wouldn't they? Because they both have leakage of emotions. Now, Rick doesn't have leakage of deviancy, but we know that he's a highly emotional person. He struggled with his emotional distress his whole life. And then we've got Kegan Kline, who most likely, as well, as much as he can, commit all these terrible crimes and try and live this secrecy, I don't know that he's somebody who is going to be really good at keeping the secrets of people above him that are engaged in some massive criminal network. I don't see this crime as any big ring of people. I do think that there are probably multiple people who are aware of what happened and who were involved in some regard in terms of like lookouts and organizers and lures and things like that. And maybe there's somebody close to the offender or offenders who has some level of influence with the investigation and has managed to therefore allow this to go unsolved or this to be pinned on Rick. But I don't think it's some massive big network either. This has been a super interesting discussion, everyone. Thanks so much for everybody just like engaging. I think it's been such an interesting chat tonight, and it's always so interesting where these go because, when we all get in here and we start talking about Delphi, like we can go on so many different tangents and it's amazing. Yeah, quietly. So, Ash and I talked about this in our live about Kathy's interview, and we were talking about so I as you probably all know, because I mention it quite a lot, I have OCD and I specialize in the treatment of OCD in clients, and this is not an uncommon response. Now, I'm not diagnosing Rick with OCD because, of course, I've never met Rick and I can't diagnose him, but it would be a diagnostic consideration, I think, in this case. And my sense here would be that, what tends to happen is people and it's not just in people with OCD. This could be in anyone who has high levels of anxiety, because anxiety disorders and anxiety in general is about the perception of threat. Now, when we think of anxiety disorders, it's the overestimation of threat. And so essentially, people with anxiety disorders overestimate the likelihood of something bad happening, and they overestimate how bad that would be if it happened, and they underestimate their capacity to cope. Now, if somebody watches lots of crime shows and knows a lot about it, like people like me, I can remember the time that I thought I was going to get in a lot of trouble because I searched, like I said, Carla Homolka at work, and accidentally came upon some pretty graphic crime scene photos. Now, I was petrified. I remember going home and saying to my husband, that's it, I'm going to lose my job. Like, this is terrible. And my husband saying, like, well, first of all, you should have searched that at work. True, I shouldn't have. But, catastrophizing, imagining the worst, imagining that you're going to be in trouble. The amount of times that I've driven past a speed camera at the normal speed, but been worried that I would, that I'd been caught for speeding, I'd lose my license. Or even when I'm stopped for a random breathalyzer. Now, I never, ever drink. I don't drink. I just don't like alcohol. And yet I'm always nervous. Now, I have had cases, and I don't want to, I won't give any specifics about people I treat, of course, ethically, but it's always okay for me to tell my own stories, I suppose. I can think of situations where I wouldn't want to put myself in case I did something wrong. And I've had clients who have those exact thoughts about things that are not just morally inappropriate, but sometimes criminally inappropriate. So a really common form of OCD is pedophile OCD. Now, people with POCD are not pedophiles. They are people who are so scared of being pedophiles, and they spend their whole lives sometimes avoiding children, avoiding, public pools or the beach or anywhere where you might see a child wearing, a swimming costume, or, changing a nappy or any of those things, because they're petrified that either they will do something, even though there's no risk, it's just an obsessional thought, or they're petrified they'll be accused of doing something. Now, those people, look into POCD if you're interested. It is not linked to pedophilia at all. It is generally very much linked to high levels of empathy and high levels of ethics as well. No, Scott, no. So a common question, anyone who has any sort of, sexual OCD, harm-based OCD, because there's also the fear of hurting others, POCD, they're not necessarily trauma survivors. In fact, majority, as far as, I guess this is anecdotally, but in my experience, the majority haven't been. No. What tends to be the common factor in the clients that have this, because it's often linked as well to scrupulosity OCD, which I've talked about before, which is this fear of being a bad person, this fear of, being immoral. Those clients, to me, and I really would love to study this, I think this is a PhD in the making for me because it's something I'm so passionate about, they tend to be the most ethically minded, morally strong, morally, I don't even know what the word is, conscious, highly empathic people. Now, I have scrupulosity OCD. I've mentioned that before, and I remember my own therapist saying to me at one point when I was really struggling with it, and she said, because basically scrupulosity OCD is, well, you have a lot of heightened responsibility. So for me, if there's even the slightest chance I've done something that might minimally harm someone, I can just berate myself. I'll give you a funny example. When I was in my 20s, I worked at McDonald's, and if I saw a green chip, I would remove it, because I think I'd read somewhere or heard somewhere that green chips green potato, like potatoes, could affect a pregnant woman. And so I would be petrified that I might accidentally give a pregnant woman a green chip and she would eat that and then she'd lose her baby. And, you basically exacerbate the risk of anything. Everything seems so much more risky and scary than it really is. And you live in this sort of cage of like restrictions on yourself just in case you do the wrong thing. It's exhausting. When I've gone through contamination OCD, I've struggled to feed my pets because I'm worried that I'm accidentally poisoning them, or because I didn't try hard enough. And so, yeah, look into scrupulosity OCD, because honestly, I have met many people, and myself included, that would say some of the things that Rick says and would be the least likely person to commit a crime. So I think most of you who have hung around here long enough and heard me speak and got to know me, you would probably all think, and of course, I mean, again, you shouldn't make an assessment of someone you just heard speaking on a YouTube, but you would probably all make this assessment that I'm probably not someone who's ever going to commit a violent, sadistic offence. Probably the opposite. And I hope that I've shown my level of compassion and care throughout the work I've done on this channel. And I'm telling you that I'm the sort of person that worries about the sorts, or has worried, maybe not currently, but has worried about some of the things that that Rick worries about. So yeah, I'm really, really, really passionate about scrupulosity OCD, because obviously it's something close to my heart, and I think it's something that would help a lot of people understand some pretty odd characteristics of like quite a few of my neurodivergent clients and my highly anxious clients, and myself included. So a lot of highly empathic, highly responsible people worry that they're going to be in trouble or do the wrong thing, or get caught doing the wrong thing. There's just this overestimation and inflation of threat and risk, and also this inflation of responsibility and an inflation of morality in a lot of cases as well, and perfectionism. Which is why I hate when anyone says the obsessive compulsive killer. I'm like, ugh, people with OCD. I'm not saying that there's no one ever with OCD who could be a killer, but it's certainly not linked to killing. And OCPD, slightly different. I'm not suggesting that's linked to killing, but it's a very different kettle of fish. So if we're talking about obsessive compulsive killers, they're usually talking more about OCPD than OCD. They're not the same thing. They sound the same. They're not the same. And maybe I could do a video on that one day, because I'm passionate about that too. I can't stand it when I hear people say that person that serial killer had OCD, and it's like, oh gosh. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, of course, Sandy, exactly. Autistic people are not. I mean, again, another group of people that gets the wrong it gets misunderstood. In fact, again, I can talk anecdotally here, but my autistic clients are often my most compassionate, ethical people that I've met. Now, I'm not going to suggest that no person of any category can or can't do something, but yeah, we should never have those generalizations. And when we're using words like obsessive and compulsive, they mean different things in different arenas. So compulsive offending is a thing, but that's not the same as OCD, because the compulsion in OCD is, well, like, whilst it obviously is to do with reducing distress, the compulsion when it comes to, say, a compulsive serial killer is to reduce, maybe they're mounting distress, I suppose, but it's not the same distress. It's not, that the whole idea of, like what we've talked about with sadism and psychopathy, is that their emotional world is quite different to the emotional world of a highly sensitive, internalizing, blame, self-conscious, so self-blame focused mind. Yeah. Yes. So that could, yeah, Scott. So yes. So I mean, lots of things are compulsive. I mean, addictions are compulsive, essentially. But the compulsive in OCD is different. It's just like obsession in OCD is different. It's not like I'm so obsessed with the new restaurant in town means I really like it. Or obsessed with someone means, I can't stop thinking about them and I might border on being a stalker, but that's not OCD obsession. OCD obsession is an intrusive, unwanted, distressing thought. So it's just that we use the same words across different areas and they mean different things. And that's why we just got to be careful. Like if we're saying someone's an obsessive compulsive killer, that's inappropriate use of it because you're putting the two words together that are part of OCD, suggesting OCD and killer go hand in hand, which they don't. So yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, I'm just getting a little bit tired now because I've still got the headache thing and I've still got a big day tomorrow. So it's really nice to have had this chat with you guys and yeah, just so appreciative of everybody who joined me today and joined the chat and who agreed and disagreed in a really respectful manner. I really love the fact that we can do that, and I hope I can be very passionate in my opinions, and so yeah, I always hope that everyone still feels like they're being heard, and even if I disagree with you or challenge you, that I'm not wanting to be disrespectful in any way because I respect each and every one of you, and we all have our own different experiences and worldviews that add to the discussion and help us really think about this. And I think most of us want to be able to think it through, to analyze it more. And I love the fact that there is that capacity in here. So thanks, guys. And I will see one day. I will Google that judge and we'll find out some more. And again, if you've ever got any recommendations, if you've got things that you want me to look into, if you've got critiques of something that I've said, please feel free to comment or send me an email if you like. I'm always happy to add some more things as well. Yeah. I like some more than others, Mustang. Not at all. Not at all. Some people look, I know some channels give everybody a wrench. I have only got a few people who have a wrench. I don't even know. I guess it's just people who I've known for a bit and who've probably shared a bit with me, and I'm like, I think I can trust this person. But you never know. You never know. You could give the wrench to the wrong person and they could kick you out of your own channel. Who knows? But yeah, I like all of you, and I hope you know that. I really like the fact that we can have these great discussions. So have a wonderful night, everybody. Or well, I say night, it's probably day for a lot of you, but have a wonderful day or night. And if anyone hasn't watched the short video that goes with this live, who did this, The Scene Speaks, please check that out. It's a short 20-minute video where I go through what the crime scene tells us about the type of offender. And again, based on research and psychological reasoning. So hopefully you find that informative and helpful, and we'll keep going with this series over time. And I'll see you guys in a few days. Bye. Love and light, everyone.